Edwards, DeMarco Jackson. And then their corners, Jalen Johnson's been really good for them. Kobe Bryant fills that out. Tyreek Stevenson's a stud. So realistically, the main holes for them, bolster that offensive line, get another weapon for Caleb. And the Chicago Bears are Super Bowl contenders at that point, if they can land those two positions. Caleb Williams, he kind of struggled to start the season to some extent, at least with expectations, but he ended it with one of the greatest playoff throws in the history of the NFL. Two of them, actually, if you want to count the Packers game too. I absolutely think that we're seeing the assurgence of Caleb Williams. And this next year, I think he takes yet another step, and we could be talking about Caleb Williams potentially in the MVP conversation if they can land this draft. If they nail this draft, then the Chicago Bears could be playing in an NFC title game. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and they should have been last year. There's this one thing called taking the points, kicking field goals. And if they did that multiple times versus the Rams, then they probably would have been in an NFC championship game versus the Seattle Seahawks. Do they win that game? It's a big if, and it probably would have been a battle. But I think Ben Johnson is going to just be the key piece for them, because a lot of people are going to talk about Caleb Williams taking a step forward, them bringing in talent on defense in the offseason, them having a good. But the real person who needs to take a step forward and reassess himself is not Caleb Williams, it's Ben Johnson. Because there were multiple times where he was way too aggressive in the playoffs. I get going for it on fourth down, but he was just spamming the go for it every single time button, where when you have an opportunity to take points, it comes around and it bites you. And especially at the end of the game versus the Rams, if you just went and kicked the field goal a couple times, not only would it have prevented a turnover from Caleb Williams, you probably walk away winning that game. And then if you did that versus the Green Bay Packers, you don't have to have a historic comeback to come out and win that game. So I do think, like, the biggest person, like, sure, Caleb Williams take a step forward, but for the Bears to really take that next step forward, it's going to be Ben Johnson learning from his mistakes last season. And I don't know if he will, because he didn't learn from Detroit, and then he's going to try and do it again. And NFL playoffs, the thing is, it's one and done. So you can make those mistakes in a game like the Packers, but when you have another game versus the Rams, okay, sure, maybe you get away next season with that, but then you get to the conference championship, like, it's one and done here. So if you're going to have 4 consecutive games where you're spamming the go for it button, it's going to come around to bite you, and that's going to probably prevent this team from winning long term if he doesn't reassess.
Yeah, and I'd like to think that this Rams game is kind of haunted in their memory, especially the fact that they didn't go for it. That's what ultimately cost their game. So I do think that maybe there is some reflection there. For Caleb, I definitely think he's going to be a stud. Their defense is going to be a lot better with the additions that they got. Kobe Bryant, I'm excited for. So as far as a roster is concerned, there's not a lot of holes there. It's just getting that replacement for DJ Moore, getting that offensive line secure, and then Ben Johnson maybe going back to the drawing board with some of these scenarios and maybe just taking the field goal every once in a while, because that does actually help you score points in the NFL.
Yeah.
I am high on Chicago. I do think they win this division currently.
Then let's move on to Minnesota. They were 9-8 last year, coming up the 14 season with Sam Darnold. And then we saw J.J. McCarthy. We got the full J.J. McCarthy experience. He had multiple games with 300 plus yards passing and 3 touchdowns. However, we also saw him get injured multiple times. We also saw him look wildly inconsistent, but we did see him show some flashes. And then we bring in Kyler Murray, bring back Aaron Jones, re-sign Ryan Van Denmark, re-sign Eric Wilson at linebacker. Then they signed James Pierre at corner. And then they also signed punter Johnny Hecker there. But now we're looking at probably the most talent that Kyler Murray has ever played with. And then it's going to be, do you think Kevin O'Connell is head and shoulders above Cliff Kingsbury as far as the impact that he's going to have for Kyler Murray? And do you think a place like Minnesota is maybe a little bit easier to lock in and focus, especially when you have that winter, versus a place like Arizona where that's the best time of year to be distracted, is kind of in the fall and winter?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that are playing positively for Kyler Murray. First of all, he goes from playing with Marvin Harrison, who's unproven, Michael Wilson, a bit unproven, and a Cardinals organization that's maybe the worst in NFL history, to now you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. You have one of the best play callers in the NFL with Kevin O'Connell. And then on the opposite side of the ball, you have a defensive coordinator in Brian Flores that gets the most out of their guys. If he can just be consistent post November, which I think with Kevin O'Connell, he'll be able to do that. Let's not also forget, like you mentioned with Phoenix, Phoenix's prime is from October to really probably March for them. In Minnesota, that's the opposite. It's going to be cold. It's going to be rigid. There's not as much things to do in Minnesota. So I think Kyler Murray, we might be seeing the best of Kyler Murray this upcoming season. It's just in this division, how far does that take him is the question.
Yeah, and I do think that he wants to lock in and get paid, right? So it's like, and for him, he's just been someone who hasn't been healthy either consistently throughout his entire career because people talk about, well, he's a short quarterback and can't see over his offensive line and make a simple pass in the middle of the field. Well, that may be true. The toughest part is just taking that punishment throughout the year. Good news is he doesn't really struggle in the cold, and then he's going to be playing in a dome with a really good Minnesota Vikings team. Again, it's going to be you now have three quarterbacks on your roster who all have injury issues in Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, and JJ McCarthy, where we could very well see all three of these guys out at some point in this season dealing with an injury. So it's like, for me, that's
Yeah.
the biggest gamble for Minnesota.
Yeah. And I can say with Kyler, the 3 times that he has been healthy, they've had success. The 2021 Cardinals started off 7-0. He looked really good. He was probably the early season MVP that year. And then injuries happened. They fizzled out. But this is an organization, and Kevin O'Connell, you've seen him resurrect the Sam Darnolds of the world. You've seen him get the most out of Kirk Cousins. So I'm excited for this Vikings team. This is one of those teams that I think could be a sleeper team and could sneak into the playoffs and make some noise. It's just, what do we get out of Kyler post November? Because that's what he's been infamous for. Starts off hot and either gets hurt or just fizzles out. I think with Kevin O'Connell, we can maximize that with him.
Yeah, as long as he has chemistry with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, I definitely think the Vikings will be better than next year, and they should be in the hunt for the playoffs. And they have the number 18 pick, and, they addressed the quarterback. I don't think they're going to take another one. They have Wentz and McCarthy now, but I do think you probably go after a safety or a corner. Like, that's your other two big areas of need. And if you can have a really good lockdown defense and you hit on a all-star, all-pro cornerback or safety at number 18, then that's going to be what helps you compete with the Chicago Bears, because in the NFC North, on any given Sunday, like, any of these teams can easily beat the other ones, and sometimes it's a blowout going the other way because the Vikings, they beat the Lions twice last year, and then they gave the Packers and Bears trouble when they played.
Yeah, I think another thing, so I agree with the corners. I think that would help them a lot. I also would like them to see them draft another running back because Aaron Jones is a lot older now. Jordan Mason is a good goal line guy, but maybe not the answer if you're going to be running the football consistently with them. With Kyler, I think that also helps having that running element. But if you can draft a running back, hit on one in, say, the 3rd round, then I think that this team could really be rocking because that's been another issue of them. They haven't been able to run the football consistently since Dalvin Cook was in town, which was a long time ago. And with Aaron Jones now is entering year 32, that's not a great age for running backs. He hasn't really been the same since Green Bay either. So I'd like to see them go out and get a running back, maybe more of an explosive one, because you have the pass catching abilities with Aaron Jones, and then a more physical running back with Jordan Mason. So go out and get an elusive running back, and I think this team could be unlocked to that next level.
Well, yeah, if this team has a consistent, like, 1 through down running back that they get in the draft, the thing with Kyler Murray is, well, he hasn't been healthy necessarily. Since DeAndre Hopkins, he hasn't really had anyone on his team you need to be afraid of or double. And people forget just how good and how elusive he is as a running quarterback. He is a baseball player, so he has that really solid slide. Now that you have Justin Jefferson, who you need at least 3 or 4 guys at a given time to pay attention to on the field. Jordan Addison, his run game is also going to be unlocked for this team, and you have Aaron Jones, who's going to be your pass catching back on 3rd down. So if you can hit on a solid physical running back in the draft, then the Vikings are going to be a hard team to stop that no one's going to want to see in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. This, I think, of all the teams in this division, this is the one that I think the most people are overlooking at this point across all the teams that we've covered so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Vikings are just one of those teams. They are arguably the best team in NFL history that hasn't won a Super Bowl. They've been to them.
Yeah.
It seems like
Yeah,
they're
they've
always
been.
good. I can never think of the Vikings, like, in my history being bad. Like, whenever I watch the NFL, the Vikings are always pretty solid. They've had some disappointing seasons, but I feel like they're a franchise that's always generally good. And then they have
Yes.
some solid playoff runs.
Yeah, I agree. This is a team. I mean, they were 14-3 2 years ago. Do I think they go 14-3? No, but could they go 12-5? Potentially. I think this team is good enough to do that. If we can get the peak Kyler Murray and they can hit on a running back, maybe solidify their secondary with the right draft, this team could win the division.
Yeah, and I think the crazy thing was last year was your floor. And you know the floor for this team is 9-8, which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is insane that there's 4 teams in this division that could all be having a winning record again this year at this point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, unless, there's an injury to Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Caleb Williams, or Kyler, like the floor for all of these teams should be 9-8.